This video contains spoilers for WandaVision Season 1, Episode 6, and the previous episodes, and potential spoilers for future episodes if our theories become a little too accurate. As always, we have no insider information, so don't worry. So this episode left us with a huge cliffhanger and some questions that may be answered in the last 3 episodes, which are rumored to be 1 hour each. So we're definitely in for something super exciting this week. Today, Olivia and Sofia will join me in another episode of So let me just start with the intro, the last time on WandaVision. We actually saw Aaron Taylor Johnson's scene from Age of Ultron. I have a feeling that it has to mean something. Is he going to come back? Are they going to mention him? What's up with that footage just suddenly showing us Aaron Taylor Johnson?
I definitely think there's something there, considering they're making it a point of highlighting the fact that he's been recast. And as we see, I don't think Wanda's obviously not aware of why he's been recast, but it's certainly like in the hex, it's noticeable to her that he's different, not only in appearance, but she's like testing him throughout the whole episode. Like, are you really like my brother?
No, yeah, I just find that it's interesting that she doesn't even know. And I guess we talked about last time that like the reason probably that Evan Peters' Quicksilver is back is because she can only manipulate matter that exists. So she had to call back from that dimension. And, you know, with like with Aaron Taylor Johnson's like body, obviously that can't happen. But I find it so interesting that she still really doesn't really know. And it's that like throughout the episode, she's like testing him and she's like not really sure what to do. And then even like Vision starts questioning somewhat, but not a lot. And it's just like everyone's just accepting this fully, which I find it kind of strange and eerie throughout the episode.
I think my opinions kind of changed from last week. I remember last week, I was like, it's definitely not a recast. And I think that's confirmed because they're really showing us their 2 Quicksilvers, at least 2 appearances. But I'm also leaning more towards Theory 2 from last week than Theory 3. So in Theory 3, I talked about how this Quicksilver was brought from the Fox universe all the way to the MCU. But now I feel like with all the stuff, which we'll talk about right at the next topic, that Evan Peters' Quicksilver was doing in this episode, makes me think that he knows more than he's willing to tell us. And I'm more inclined to think that he is either Mephisto himself or being controlled by Mephisto, which brings me actually to the next topic because of how connected they are. In this episode, just kind of like Agnes in previous episodes, Evan Peters' Quicksilver added super bizarrely. First of all, he called Billy and Tommy Demon Spawn. He said, "Give hell, Demon Spawn." I mean, that's exactly what happened in the comics when Mephisto had these 2 children kind of as a spawn of his soul. He seems to know more than everyone else. He's like, oh, how did you do it? Like, how did you change people's lives? Like, they get better hairstyles now. I actually think this world is better. And also he talked about like, oh, like, I'm here to give you grief. Or like, you can't have your dead husband die twice, which makes me think there is foul play here. But who is Evan Peters' Quicksilver? Is he Mephisto or is he still the Fox Quicksilver?
I guess for me, the Mephisto theory does make sense more now because of, you know, again, he like definitely knows more than everyone, especially like about the part where it's like, oh, how did he like add the children? Now there's like children here. And he just like knows more information. But I guess kind of like what we talked about last week, what I still wouldn't understand is why Mephisto wouldn't have like Aaron Taylor Johnson's like body and would instead do Evan Peters. Like what would be the point of that? But I don't know, maybe there is more trickery into that, but that's like the only thing that kind of like is like the hole in that theory for me.
Yeah, I definitely think there's foul play, considering one thing that really bothers me is that you see throughout the whole episode that Tommy's really excited to like be with his uncle, but Billy is not. Billy is consistently scared of him. And he's noticed that like mom started acting weird ever since like her brother Pietro came to visit. And in that moment, in the beginning when he's talking to like the camera, if you look to the side, like Quicksilver is the only one who like notices him talking to the camera and like makes a face and then just keeps going. And I was like, oh, that's strange.
I think there's a lot of evidence to show that he's Mephisto. I know I'm contradicting myself from last week, but part of moving forward is to accept your past mistakes and say that your past theories could be wrong. I think I dismissed the fact that Evan Peters is Mephisto a bit too quickly. I think there's several evidence here. First of all, obviously the demon spawn one, that is so obvious. But the second interesting thing he said was he said that when Vision said he's going to go to the neighborhood watch instead of spending Halloween with the kids, Quicksilver said, or Evan Peters Quicksilver said, oh, the kids need a father figure. I'm the good old XY chromosome here, which makes me think he is Mephisto because technically in the comics, the children are Mephisto's children. Technically, Mephisto is their daddy, which makes me think that Evan Peters, by saying like, oh, they need a fatherly figure, he's actually saying he's going to reclaim these children, which is exactly what he did in the comics, to gain the power. But here's a crazy theory that I have, because I still don't think that they brought Evan Peters for no reason at all, aside from fan service. And I think, like Sofia said, I agree he can't just shapeshift into Quicksilver. I don't think Mephisto's that weak. He can probably shapeshift into someone better, but someone who looks more like Aaron Taylor Johnson. But here's the thing. What if it's still the Fox version of Quicksilver, but Mephisto simply took him from the multiverse and took possession of him? Because if we assume that the villain of this show is Mephisto, and that this movie, Spider-Man 3 and Doctor Strange, form a trilogy, we can assume that Mephisto is kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes in every single movie. That brings me to my question of Spider-Man 3. What if all of these people that come from the other universe, initially Mephisto has some sort of control over them, which is how Doc Ock and Electro could come back from the dead because Mephisto revived them. And that's probably why Jamie Foxx said his Electro looks different from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, because maybe Mephisto used his power and changed his appearance. It's kind of like how Quicksilver here changed his appearance to fit into Westview and gave him new powers. And what if that happens? So Spider-Man's really fighting Mephisto, controlling the Sinister Six. And in Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness, it's going to be the MCU heroes led by Doctor Strange versus the Multiverse Army led by Mephisto. I actually think that would be a very cool thing to see in Multiverse of Madness and really connect the three stories together. But I have no basis for this. I just think it's a possibility.
No, it's definitely a possibility. I feel like Marvel's really pushing the multiverse right now. So like we're seeing the beginnings of it. And I don't think they're going to come out. They're not going to come right out and say it immediately, obviously. But I do think that we're going to get this slow building of like behind the scenes, something is going on, and we'll slowly get to see the multiverse develop. So I'm really excited.
No, it makes sense. Like we were considering those two theories as completely separate, but they really could just like work together well perfectly with that. And also, still holding strong to that Fox theory, because as we talked about last week, I really want Magneto back, and that would, with that theory, that could make it possible. But yeah, it does make sense that Mephisto maybe he could also be limited by like how we were saying that Wanda couldn't really bring Aaron Taylor Johnson back, like her own brother, because like we don't know where his body is, body's dead. Maybe Mephisto's limited by that same capacity, so that's why he also had to pull into the multiverse. So that could explain why we have Evan Peters, because like you said, I don't think they're just bringing Evan Peters back for fan service. Like it's not, Marvel's not just like that. There has to be a reason behind it.
It's interesting because we don't know for 100% that Mephisto is in the show. It's just a lot of evidence has shown us that he's in the show. But also there's another possibility that people have raised in this week's episode, which is Nightmare, who was referenced twice in the show. I think once, I forgot the first time, but the second time I remember was when Evan Peters was like, oh, wasn't your power kind of like shooting nightmares and giving people nightmares? So who do we think the villain is? Is it Mephisto? Is it Nightmare? Is it both? Or is Marvel doing a blend of the two characters like they have done for some of the other MCU characters?
I think it's possible that Marvel might blend a little bit. I would be happy with either of them as a villain, because I mean, even though I love Mephisto, Nightmare is a fear lord, so it would, and he's under sort of Mephisto's domain, so it would make sense as a sort of lead in to Mephisto if maybe Mephisto is being reserved for like something that's going to be on the silver screen, like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So either way, whatever they go with, I'm fine. But like I do think that I'm kind of scared that they might just combine the two characters, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's a possibility they could combine them since we've seen a lot of Marvel movies. But I think just this show, as we've talked about, could have just multiple villains, and we've like talked about the degree. Like Wanda, in a sense, is actually the kind of like the villain of the shows we've seen. We've also talked about like Agnes and like the guy that's the head of Sword who sucked in this episode, and like so it could make sense to have like just multiple villainous forces. So I could also like just see these like two villains here, or just like these multiple antagonizing villains in the show.
See, I have a theory that I think the next MCU villain is not going to be just one person, but I think it's going to be this whole organization. I think with what we're seeing here, I have no proof for this, but I think we might see something like the Death Eaters in Harry Potter, where it's a bunch of like evil sorcerers and wizards. Like, who do we see right now who we speculated, right? We have Mephisto, we have Nightmare, we have Agatha Harkness, we have the Grim Reaper. I mean, these are all kind of villains that are in the sort of same domain of villains. And it's very easy for Marvel to somehow blend them into one organization, maybe led by the devil himself, Mephisto. And I really, I agree with Olivia. I'm scared that they're going to blend two characters together because Nightmare and Mephisto are too iconic of characters for them to blend in. And I think with Marvel before, they're kind of blending in unimportant characters, kind of like side characters no one really knew from the comics. And I think for the movies, for Mephisto and Nightmare, who are like two big name villains, I just don't think it works. But I really do think the two of them could be at play here. Maybe they're both leaders of the organization. Maybe one works for the other. But I think one of them is sort of the person creating this whole universe for Wanda. The other person is giving her nightmares and visions to hunt her, which I think is just so exciting because it's so different from Thanos and his whole like alien warlord route. If we're going to like sorcerers and demons and devils, and I just can't wait to see how this manifests into Multiverse of Madness. So kind of moving on to Mephisto a little bit, to another possible villain of the show, Hayward. This episode confirmed our theory of Hayward. I was looking at it, I was like, I can't believe how accurate our theories are. He is after Vision, and he is probably making weapons for Vision. And I have a feeling that because I've read some theories on the internet, and I personally think this is the case, I think Hayward may have some connection to Ultron. Because the whole plan of Ultron was to give Vision back in Age of Ultron for his next form. And I think maybe Ultron is at play here, controlling the technology in Westview, kind of like having a view of what's going on, because Hayward seems to know what is going on in Westview, but he decided not to interfere, which I think that he's definitely using Vision for something. I think he could either go with the way that we say he's going to develop weapons with Vision, or that he's going to somehow work for Ultron and do his bidding. So what do we think is going on with Hayward, besides the fact that he's probably going to be a villain in this series?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't want Ultron back, so I hope it's not that.
I'm kind of on the same boat. Maybe if they change Ultron, but yeah, definitely wouldn't be that excited for Ultron. But I would be excited if we give Hayworth a bit more than just I want Vision, I want the power. Like to just have a bit more with the background of Ultron, that would be cool. Because since we guessed that little part, I would like something more exciting than just him wanting to use Vision as a weapon. But yeah, that could perfectly make sense. And then the show we're constantly referencing to Ultron. So it kind of could suggest like a leading up to him actually being a part of the show.
I actually think there is a cool way they could bring Ultron in, that if they don't give him a body, but he kind of exists only as a voice, kind of like Kilgrave in Jessica Jones seasons 2 and 3. Like he's there, like there's this James Spader voice be like, you need to get Vision for me, or something like that. I think that would be kind of haunting, where he doesn't really have a physical manifestation, but rather he's like a ghost that haunts everyone in here. And I think that could be pretty cool. And it would be cool if they're like, all the villains are kind of scheming for something. And that makes me think of the other Marvel movies that we're going to get. I mean, the Mandarin from Shang-Chi is kind of like a sorcerer himself. It seems like the villains of the next phase of the MCU are very much sort of magic-based individuals, which makes me think that Doctor Strange is going to be the one who's going to be the next Tony Stark, or at least be the leader of the Avengers, because he has the most powers, and he's unlike Wanda, who is kind of unstable and could destroy anyone anytime, or Captain Marvel, who's always unavailable, which makes me think that Doctor Strange is going to step up.
Yeah, I do like the idea of Ultron as a sort of ghost in the machine type of character. That would be cool. I would for them to bring him back without all the things that happened in the second Avengers movie. But I do think, yeah, the MCU is definitely leaning towards this whole magic sorcerer type thing, which is really exciting for me because I feel like, okay, sorcerers are kind of awesome. But we'll see, I guess.
No, yeah, actually that kind of like eerie, like just voice of Ultron could actually fix a lot of the problems I had with Ultron, where that they made him like not intimidating at all and just like throwing a bunch of jokes and gave him like a weird sense of humor, which did not work for me. But if we make it kind of like that, just like an ominous, like just voice telling like Hayworth what to do, it would actually fix a lot of the problems I had with Ultron. So that could work.
Yeah, I mean, at this rate, I mean, just kind of deviating from Ultron a little bit, I feel like at this rate, somebody better give Hawkeye a call, be like, dude, you got to come fix this. We need the Avengers right now. So I think it's fair game to say that we might get an Avengers cameo, but I'm more interested into who that aerospace engineer is that she's meeting on the ridge, but is never there. My money is still on Reed Richards. We're gonna see John Krasinski popping up as Reed Richards, be like, "What's up, guys?" Like he doesn't even need to announce who he is. Like we'd already know. Be like, "Reed, welcome to the MCU."
I thought that the other day. I was like, what if it's John Krasinski? Because everyone would know exactly who he was playing. No one would have to guess.
What if it's Keanu Reeves as Reed Richards? Didn't Kevin Feige say they reach out to Keanu every project?
Yeah, they really want Keanu Reeves in
like,
Marvel.
I feel like this kind of like alternate reality stuff is very much similar to the Matrix, and I think Keanu, it's possible that Keanu is attracted to his script, and the Craven rumor turned out to be untrue, or that he like denied his involvement in that, like he rejected their proposal. So maybe Keanu will pop up somewhere in the MCU as like Mr. Fantastic and say some really funny stuff. I'm very excited for that. So moving on, so we see more glitches in the hex, and it's slightly weirder than the previous glitch we've seen. So we saw one of the residents. She's having this repeated motion of hanging that skeleton up, and we see her husband kind of also having the same repeated motion. But the more weird thing is that once you're outside kind of this radius, when Vision goes to the edge of Westview, the people just kind of paused over there. Like they didn't move. There's nothing going on. So which makes me think that, first of all, Wanda doesn't have complete control over this reality because there are all these glitches. Second, it makes me question if these people are real or not. Because remember last episode, Vision said, I saw no kids here at Westview. And then boom, this episode, we see a bunch of kids in Halloween. So are these people real people, or are they just manifestations, kind of like Billy and Tommy, like we speculated last week?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and I remember Evan Peters Quicksilver saying something like, "Oh, look at all these kids here for the Halloween episode. You've just been like keeping them in bed until now, right?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, it's possible that it's possible that all the kids were in the same position as those on the outskirts of Westview, where they were just frozen when she's like not able to deal with them. I definitely think the whole outskirts and repetitive motion thing has to do with Wanda. Her powers are vast, but obviously there are limits. I mean, she even says in a past episode when she's arguing with Vision, she's like, "You really think that I make everybody do everything all day and I get them to their dentist appointments on time and everything?" So she only has like the ability to control people within her immediate vicinity. So I do think the people on the outskirts are real. I just think they're trapped in their bodies because of the nature of the hex, which is awful.
Yeah, NPCs is what they are. They're just non-playable characters. I think there's a very scary theory online going right now that when Herb said we are all, and then Vision didn't know what was going on, and then when Vision was telling Agnes like, "Oh, what happened to me?" Agnes said, "You're dead, dead, dead." What if everyone in Westview is already dead? Wanda like killed all of them, and then they're just kind of living over there. So when they get out of Westview, they're going to die. I have another theory that kind of disproves this theory later on, but I just kind of wanted to discuss the possibility of this for now. Like, what if some people or all of the people in Westview are dead and they're kind of revived?
I think that's possible. I think it might have something to do with why when Vision finds Agnes, she's literally on the edge of town in a car about to like leave, but she's not moving. And I do question why he found her in initially she was in this sort of catatonic state, and then he wakes her up and then like puts her back. But we've never seen Agnes do the catatonic thing before. It might just be because she's too far from Wanda, maybe. But like then again, why would she be trying to leave if she knew like the true nature of everything that was going on?
For me, I guess for the from what I remember in the some episodes, like they were identifying the people, right, of the missing person. Wouldn't we already know that like they were, or maybe it's just like it's unknown that they're dead, that she just killed them automatically, but no one still knows they're dead. No, yeah, that could work. Or maybe like
Yeah.
Agnes was actually just questioning whether she would rather just like completely die and then continue to live in this reality, as we've seen, which is so dark. Oh my god.
Yeah, that
But
could.
If we Okay, so when you go back and think about it though, aren't there multiple people who when woken up, I think Agnes tells Vision that like we can't leave because she won't even let us think about it.
I think Agnes is lying in that scene. I think that scene is a
Yeah.
huge misdirect to make us think that Agnes is not Agatha Harkness. But here's the weird part of that show, because when people are frozen, they don't speak in the town. But Agnes was speaking and kind of chanting when she was frozen. And then when she wakes up, she doesn't suddenly have a new name because everyone else has a real name besides their in-universe name. But Agnes is not. She's still Agnes. She didn't be like, oh, my name is like Janice something, something, something. But she says, no, my name is Agnes. And the weirdest part is that when she started laughing, because I watched with captions on, it says laughing maniacally. That's the word they used officially. And she's wearing a witch outfit, which just makes me think that she's trying to throw Vision off. But here's the other thing, because I had a discussion with Professor Carnes on Tuesday about our theories of WandaVision. And we actually came up with the belief that what if Agnes is not an evil person? Like she works for Mephisto, but like she came in here trying to warn Wanda about like Mephisto, kind of like a Professor Snape character, where she's like, you know, something is wrong and she's trying to warn Wanda about it, but she cannot like directly tell her about everything because like Mephisto is watching. And now she's also losing a sense of control because of that.
then why do you think she's like, because throughout like the season we've seen her like try to like test like Wanda's abilities. Like I remember like the dog scene or doing like, should we redo this scene again? What do you think the point of that would be according to that theory?
I think the motivation of Agnes is that she wants to sort of test Wanda's power, I guess, first as a bidding to Mephisto, because like I'm pretty sure she was assigned as a messenger to watch Wanda at all times, which explains why she shows up at the most convenient time ever. But I also think that by showing Wanda sort of the more grim side of Westview, she's trying to warn Wanda about this reality, saying like it's not really what you think. But also with her saying like I want to redo that, maybe she like, because in the comics she's a mentor of Wanda Maximoff, which makes me think that what if Agnes secretly wants Wanda to stay in this bubble reality just because she wants Wanda to be happy? Because I think with all these episodes, maybe it's just Agnes is a really good actress and she fooled all of us. But I really don't get a lot of villain vibes from her. I get Loki vibes from Agnes, but I don't get like vibes like Thanos or like Mephisto from her. I think she's like now way too likable and sweet of a character to suddenly turn evil. But again, Ego was kind of sweet and kind until he turned into a villain in Guardians 2, which, you know, that's why I think like my theory may not have any basis.
Honestly, thinking again about the reality of the hex, I know Sophia and I were talking about like the two twins, and so we were theorizing last week about like the nature of the twins' reality. So like, what if they step outside the hex? They probably die, right? So we saw Vision step outside the hex in this episode, and he was obviously going to die until Wanda did as she did. But for the twins, it seems that they are genuinely like independent entities of Wanda, because Billy's powers allow him to sense that Vision's in danger. And it's not like he sensed it and Wanda knew immediately. He had to like go tell her. So they're absolutely like 100% real individuals inside the hex.
What if Wanda was pregnant during Infinity War?
Okay. So how long did everyone disappear for again? 5 years?
They disappeared for 5 years, but for them it's only like 5 minutes.
Yes. Okay. Because they didn't exist. Yeah. They didn't like go anywhere. They simply didn't exist for 5 years and then they came back. So if they came back and then Wanda had the twins inside of Westview, maybe that's why they can like age themselves up. It's not because they're not real. It's just because they're in Westview and that's how it works, I guess.
Yeah, they're still real people, but real people who were born in Westview.
Yeah.
So
That
Westview, in a
makes sense.
sense, like, kind of gave them that power.
How is Wanda pregnant though?
Well,
Uh,
I think that's an important question. No, but I'm just saying because Vision's like a synthezoid.
that is a very good question. Because here's the thing, right? Because in the comics, the children are manifestations of Mephisto.
Yeah, and then the later heroes are reincarnated versions of them, but they're not born from Wanda's like womb or anything. They're like reincarnated.
Mhm.
How long was the period between Endgame and this show again? 3 weeks?
Yes, I think.
Yeah.
What if, because Wanda said I was so lonely after Endgame, what if after that, one of the deals she made was with Mephisto was that she's going to have a child? So she kind of born the demon spawn in the real world, and she gave him birth in Westview. Because technically, I don't know how the comics explain it. I'm not sure if the comics did, but like it'd be weird to be like, oh, Vision can suddenly have children now because he's a robot.
No, he definitely can't in the comics. Like he can't. Because the original versions were just from Mephisto, and the secondary versions were like magically reincarnated through other humans, and then like Wanda found them.
Poor Vision. And here, speaking of Vision, I think we were accurate in saying that Vision was a corpse, because as soon as he stepped out of Westview, he started disintegrating into a corpse. But some people noticed that the Mind Stone didn't go away. It was kind of there, and then he hit his head inside the grass, so we never saw whether it was the Mind Stone disappeared or like it just kind of like got hidden in the grass. But the question is, like, the Mind Stone was gone. Like,
Yeah.
both versions. The first version was destroyed by Thanos. The second version was returned to where it belonged to by Captain America. Unless Captain America decided to be like, I just want to go find Peggy, so I don't care about the stones anymore.
Yeah, we don't talk about it.
which I don't think is the case. Where did that stone appear? Does Wanda somehow have the ability to reconstruct the Infinity Stones? Because that sounds ridiculous, because her powers came from the stone.
Well, we've seen her manipulate Vision's Mind Stone before in Civil War, but she can only manipulate what's there. Like, I don't think she could, it'd be ridiculous to say she could create an Infinity Stone.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Because Thanos didn't say, oh, the stones are completely destroyed. He just said they're reduced to atoms, which means that the atoms of the stone still exist. What if Wanda just reconstructed that stone out of the atom? I know that sounds crazy, but
No, they were reduced to atoms, but salvageable atoms.
salvageable atoms, exactly. Like the little atoms of the Mind Stone are just kind of still floating somewhere in the universe, being like, reassemble me.
Maybe Mephisto had something to do with an approximation of an Infinity Stone, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that is fake too. I don't know if you guys seen the trailer for WandaVision, but there was this one scene where Wanda was looking at the Mind Stone, and then it blew up in her face. Mm-hmm. What if this Mind Stone's like fake, right? That Mephisto gave her to like, oh, let's use this to resurrect Vision. And speaking of giving somebody something fake that they cannot use and it ends up killing them, we have our most confusing and scary commercial of all time in WandaVision. I would even go as far as to say that this is probably the most scary moment in the MCU, not counting the Netflix shows, because I don't think they technically count as part of the MCU anymore. So what is going on with that commercial? Because the previous commercials all kind of portray a trauma in Wanda's past, but this one seems like you cannot really pinpoint anything in Wanda's past that's really related to whatever the heck happened in that commercial. So can somebody run us through of what happened?
Yeah, so what happened, which is, again, super creepy, is that there's this little boy in like an island and he's starving. And then this shark just comes and then it's like, oh, you just need some yo magic and you'll be okay, right? And then the boy gets the yo magic, but he can't open it. And then you literally see him starve to death and his like skin deteriorates and you just see his bone. So then from what we see is the boy's given magic, but the magic doesn't seem like he can't open it, but the shark can, and that's like how he survived. And then that's the commercial.
Yeah.
In stop motion, which makes it even creepier.
Yeah, the stop motion. It's always been like the creepiest genre of animation ever, but now it's terrifying.
So what do you think this commercial means?
Okay, so Sophia and I we don't have a coherent, like complete narrative, but there are very specific things that are like bothering us. Okay, so the food being called Yo Magic, first of all, is very suspicious because it sounds like it's your magic. And when the boy asks, "Oh, like how did you survive?" and the shark explicitly says, "I snacked on Yo Magic." So, and we also noticed the shark sort of talks suspiciously like Pietro, like Evan Peters' Pietro. And we're going with the theory that Mephisto is Evan Peters, and it sort of makes sense that you know how Mephisto's whole thing is making deals with people and then it going horribly wrong for them. So maybe it's a sort of illustration of like an abstraction of what happened to Wanda when she made the hex. Like she made a deal with the devil, but it didn't really work out.
Exactly what I think is happening. So here's the narrative I wrote. I'm looking at my phone because I wrote up this whole theory. So to decipher the commercial, I watched it like 10 times before and I read some opinions on the internet before I constructed a story of my own. So let's go through the very beginning of that commercial because I actually think this is probably the best and probably the most important scene in this episode is this commercial. Mm-hmm. So we start out with this little boy on a lonely island. And we see that this boy is wearing a red t-shirt. And who wears red in the MCU? Wanda. She's on a lonely island, just like Wanda post Endgame. She's on this little lonely island. She doesn't really know what to do. Her companions are a crab, which I don't know what that crab represents, but we can talk about it later, and a dead fish. So it's like really, really bad for her. Maybe the dead fish is Vision's dead body or something like that. But she said, "I'm so hungry, I could literally eat anything." Kind of like how Wanda said, "I'm so lonely, I can do anything." Then Mephisto or Nightmare, who is the shark, appears because the shark is never the good person. Some people made a joke because like they compared Michael Fassbender's smile to Bruce from Finding Nemo, so they said like it's Magneto, the shark, which I think that's just way too out there. But the shark arrives and tells her that he can help. Wanda's like, "Oh, what did you do before?" And he's like, "By feeding on your magic." We know the whole thing about Mephisto in the comics is that he wants one that's chaos magic by feeding on your magic. And what is the color of the yogurt? Strawberry, pink. Whose power has that kind of color? Wanda's powers. And so he gives Wanda new magic. So I think Mephisto's behind everything of kind of giving Wanda more powers, because how does she become so powerful between Endgame and this? I think that's the only explanation for it. However, she cannot open the yogurt, just like how Wanda cannot really control her powers. That is outside of her control. It's there, but she cannot utilize it because it's all a lie. It's all an illusion. And Wanda's more and more disconnected with the real world, and the world devours her on that lonely island of hers. So this hex is really that representation of that little island that she's on, and she's being eaten away by Mephisto. And I think the snack of survivors is simply meant that she survived, but the other loved ones in her life didn't. So it's like, oh, now I'm gonna feed on the survivor, which actually is a very, very grim interpretation of the commercial. But I really think it foreshadows something that's gonna happen to Wanda. And we already see her reality being torn apart, how Vision was kind of tearing apart, just like the boy in the commercial. That's kind of what is happening already. So I think that commercial is really foreshadowing something that's gonna happen to Wanda. It's just something that happened to her, which makes me even more interested into seeing what's gonna happen next. Professor Carnes predicted this on Tuesday. I'm going to tell him next Tuesday that like he actually predicted this. He said that we're going to get something super dark and scary as a commercial later on. And this is it. I mean, I had this theory about the last commercial revealing that commercial man and commercial lady are her parents. And you know how in a lot of 2000s commercials, they have these like really scary commercials of drive safely or something bad's going to happen. What if we have, because they've shown us Kid Wanda in the intro for episode 5. What if what happens is that like Kid Wanda reappears and then it's like commercial man, commercial lady is like, "Wanda, be good." And they go out and they drive and get into a car accident. And then it literally ends with a message like, "Drive safely. where you can lose your family or something like that. And it runs full circle into like Wanda's trauma and exactly what happened to her.
That's a really good theory.
It
I know
is.
Sophia and I are also thinking about how, you know how it says the snack for survivors at the ending of the commercial? There's definitely a moment in Age of Ultron where Captain America is talking to Agent Hill, and Hill's like concerned about Wanda and Pietro as like a threat, and Cap goes, no, they're survivors. So like that's definitely talking about Wanda, and obviously like we're alluding to the fact that another theory for the commercial could be the fact that Wanda's magic couldn't save Pietro.
No, yeah, that's how I interpret it a lot too. First, when I saw the fish, it reminded me of like, in the episode there was like a flashback where Pietro and Wanda were like going trick or treating, and then they got like a fish, right? So that's what I thought of it, right?
Red herring.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah, so that's what my mind immediately like, oh, the fish is there, and then it's like dead, and this was like a memory with like Pietro. So really for me, like the little boy in the island could represent Wanda and how like this magic, like it's just like not stable, but it could also just represent all the people she was unable to save with her magic. So it could represent, even though with like Pietro had Wanda was there for him and she couldn't save him even with this magic, he could not like open it and be saved. Vision could also represent that. So it could represent just her and like her inability to use like this magic, and then like her internal struggle of like her magic that can't actually say that has like failed and not saved everyone. Not saved the survivors.
I think there's a lot of interpretations for this commercial, and I think it's foreshadowing something that will happen, or something that we haven't seen that they're going to reveal, rather than something we've already seen, which is what makes this commercial kind of more suspicious. And I think the next commercial is definitely going to go even more out there. I think it's going to leave all of us in chills. This one already left me in chills, and I think the next one is going to get even scarier. So I want to move on by kind of talking about the last topic, which is the expansion of the Hex. But instead of talking about like how she expanded the Hex and everything, because I think like that's already kind of a topic that we've discussed, I want to go on that scene where Darcy was telling Monica, your cellular structure has been changed. You're getting superpowers. I mean, on the surface level, it could mean photon. But what if on the deeper level, which contradicts my theory about everyone in Westview being dead, this is how mutants are born in the MCU. All the Westview residents get their cells changed at the end of this because they've been there for so long. Monica was only there for like a few hours in real time, and she's already having a lot of change. What if by the end, these people end up not the same and they become the mutants? So just like you said, Olivia, last time, is not no more mutants, but no, more mutants, and Wanda creates mutants in the MCU to kind of be her family, kind of like the House of M. You got this mutant thing going on.
That'd be so cool, man. I'm so excited if that happens. I really like when they find ways to like sort of integrate, like it's not explicitly just that they're integrating the Fox universe with the Marvel universe, but the fact that like you have the problem of like mutants being an entirely different species from humans, and how do we integrate that into the MCU? I feel like it's a creative, like concise way to do it instead of having to do some weird reboot thing where you have to forget everything about these movies and like these are the new ones. We don't need to do that. It's fine if they just do it like this.
Thank you guys for tuning into another episode of Different Theories. We're going to take a slight break next week for episode 7. We're going to come back when episode 8 is finished to do a final recap before the explosive finale that is episode 9. Now, that is if the rumors about there being a 10th episode, secret 10th episode, is not true. And so we hope you really enjoyed this spoiler talk. There will be more coming in the next weeks. Please like, subscribe, and share. And also like our Facebook page, like our Instagram page. And please sign up for Diff Exec position so you can plan out all kinds of fun events and have the chance to be on this show. Thank you guys again. And we hope you have an amazing week. And we'll see you in episode 7 and 8.